how can we possibly know what actually happened thousands of years ago without being there to see it? Seriously, think about it. We weren't there. In today's Explainer, we're going to learn exactly how to look into the past and uncover the truth. You know, the study of history is really just one grand mystery investigation. We're the detectives, and to solve any ancient case, we need a very specific toolkit. This toolkit consists of two main things: the clock, which lets us measure time and figure out when things happened, and clues, which are the physical objects and written primary sources that actually tell us what occurred. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is your exact visual roadmap of the concepts you need to memorize for your exam. We've got 6 steps: unlocking the past, mastering the timeline, centuries and calendars, archaeological sources of history, literary and other sources, and finally, the history detectives. Grab your notebooks, we're moving fast. Part 1, Unlocking the Past, Connecting Yesterday and Today. Listen, history isn't just a boring list of old facts or dead kings. It's the essential study of the human past. And honestly, it's the only way we can possibly make sense of the crazy world we live in right now. There's this fantastic quote from the historian E.H. Carr. He says, "History is an unending dialogue between the present and the past." Why? Because we can only fully understand our present reality in the light of the past. That dialogue is unending because every single time we ask a new question today, we have to look backward to find the answer. Moving on to part 2, Mastering the Timeline, the mathematics of history. We're opening up our detective kit and pulling out our very first major tool. I'm flagging this right now. This is highly testable exam material. Understanding how to read and calculate dates is an absolutely crucial, non-negotiable skill for any history detective. Take a look at how time transitions on a timeline. You have BCE, which stands for Before Common Era, counting down, 2 BCE, then 1 BCE, then it immediately shifts to CE, or Common Era, counting up, 1 CE, then 2 CE. The absolute most crucial detail to notice here: there is no year 0. Literally no year 0. It jumps straight from 1 BCE to 1 CE. Now, because there's no year 0 in the calendar, calculating the distance between these dates requires a concrete mathematical formula. So here's the trick. If you want to find out how many years pass between a date in BCE and a date in CE, you add the two numbers together and then you must subtract 1. Let's walk through it. Say we go from 2 BCE to 2 CE. Add 2 plus 2, which gives you 4. Subtract 1, and boom, your answer is 3 years. Commit that formula to memory. It's going to save you on your test. Beyond just doing the math, timelines let us actually see the sequence of major historical events visually. Even if you don't have all the exact dates memorized perfectly, a timeline instantly clarifies the order of history. It puts centuries of human development into a single understandable view. Like, just plotting out major figures instantly reveals that the birth of the Buddha occurred way before the birth of Jesus. All right, part 3, Centuries and Calendars, Measuring Eras. We've looked at individual years, but as historians, we're dealing with massive, sprawling stretches of time. Let's build up our toolkit with the specific vocabulary we need to measure these long eras. Make sure you write down this super clear definition for your notes. A century is any period of exactly 100 years. Now, the way we number centuries can get a little tricky, so just remember that the first century CE ran from year 1 to year 100. Following that logic, we are currently living in the 21st century CE, which kicked off in 2001 and goes all the way to 2100. The next crucial vocab word you need is millennium. A millennium is a huge chunk of time, 1,000 years. If your exam asks you to identify a 1,000-year span, millennium is your answer. Oh, and for the plural, you can totally say either millenniums or millennia. Both are perfectly correct. But hey, timekeeping isn't just about the calendar on your phone. Traditionally, in India, calendars like the Panchanga have been used for ages. It's a brilliant system relying entirely on the astronomical positions of the sun and the moon. A Panchanga is essentially a book of tables that predicts incredibly specific events. Stuff like solar and lunar eclipses, weather patterns, and the exact timing of seasonal festivals. It is honestly amazing to think ancient astronomers were calculating these complex math tables centuries before anyone even invented the modern telescope. Part 4, Archaeological Sources of History, Tangible Clues. So we know how the clock works to measure time. Now how do we find out what actually happened during that time? We shift our focus to the physical objects, the clues left behind in the dirt. When historians look for clues, they're facing a massive mountain of information. To make this easy for your exams, I want you to mentally categorize all these historical sources into two neat, highly testable buckets: archaeological sources and literary sources. Think of both of these as primary sources, meaning they come directly from the time period we're studying with no modern interpretation. Archaeological sources are things you can physically touch, like excavated tools, metal coins, and giant stone monuments. Literary sources are things you read, like ancient handwritten manuscripts, epic poems, and travelogues. And this brilliantly illustrates where all those physical clues end up once they're finally dug out of the earth. Institutions like the National Museum in New Delhi act as these giant, secure treasure chests for our archaeological sources. This is where experts preserve the really fragile stuff: statues, ancient coins, delicate ornaments, so they don't disintegrate, and we can keep studying them for generations to come. Take, for example, an intricate pillar capital or an ancient seal depicting an animal. These are absolute textbook examples of archaeological evidence. Just by looking closely at the craftsmanship, the materials they used, and the writing stamped on the seal, we can completely reconstruct the economy, the art, and the daily lives of the people who actually made them thousands of years ago. Part 5. Literary and Other Sources. Written Evidence. Now we're moving on to the second major bucket of historical clues: the written records and the stories passed down over time. I definitely encourage you to hit pause here and note these down. These are your classic examples of non-physical history. This bucket is full of things like ancient manuscripts, sacred texts like the Vedas and Ityasas, and early scientific manuals. It also includes travelogues written by awestruck foreign visitors exploring new lands, plus poems, plays, and even folklore that was whispered around campfires long before anyone wrote it down. These texts are literally the voices of the past, telling us exactly what people were thinking, fearing, and dreaming about. Part 6. The History Detectives. Who studies the past? Okay, we've got our timeline clock, and we've got our source clues. But who actually pieces together this massive jigsaw puzzle? You've got to know the specific job titles of our history detectives. Definitely emphasize these ology and ist vocabulary words, because they are super likely to show up as matching questions on your exam. Archaeologists are the ones who dig in the earth to excavate physical artifacts. Epigraphists are specialized language experts who study ancient inscriptions carved into stone or metal. And anthropologists, they study the overall development of human societies and cultures. But what's really fascinating is that history isn't just about digging in the dirt or reading dusty old books anymore. It involves some incredibly cutting-edge modern science. Detectives today use climate studies, complex chemical analysis of ancient pottery, and even the DNA genetics of human remains to pull entirely new data out of the past. Today, a scientist in a lab coat is just as much a history detective as an explorer holding a shovel. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. But I want to leave you with a quick thought about your own place on the timeline. Imagine it's thousands of years from now, and a future historian is investigating the grand mystery of the 21st century. What sources are you leaving behind for them to discover? Will your history be read through the digital texts and videos you post online? Or maybe the physical objects you leave behind? Keep that in mind as you study the past, because whether you realize it or not, you are actively creating history right now.